Hello and welcome to another podcast from Fantasy Football Scout. It's Championship Manager FPL today, and I'm joined by Luke as always. How are you doing?
I'm very good, Andy. I'm a bit depressed after my shocking game week score this week, but I don't think I'm alone there. I think you also had a shocker, and numerous others did, didn't they? So,
Yeah, pretty
we'll
much.
see.
I mean, we'll go through some of the key talking points and then the community questions at the end, as always. But yeah, I mean, I'll quickly do mine, and you can say how you got on. I think the average was 47. And I scored 38. I sold Salakovic. I got to be honest, I didn't have a clue about what to do this week. I had two free transfers, which didn't help. I would have happily done nothing. So I took him out for Scowcroft, and Salakovic scored. I changed captain from Van Nistelrooy to Pedersen, who missed a penalty. Trying to be a bit too clever there, I think. Shearer got a red card, and I played three £6.5 million defenders, and not one of them got a clean sheet. Although Ian Harte did get 6 points, so we'll talk about him in a sec. How about you? I think it was pretty similar, right?
Yeah, I mean, I was 76th, and I looked at the top 100 and even scrolled a bit further down to obviously where I am now. And I got the worst score out of every single person I could see, 29 points after a hit. Absolutely shocking. But, if I'd have just left it, I would have been something like 22, 23 points better off. So I did the same as you. Last minute took Salakovic out for a hit um, in order to get Scowcroft. Now, that was for 4 games. I mean, I didn't think Salakovic would score against Manchester United. And obviously, I still feel like that there is a chance that could work out over the 4 games. So I'm not too angry about that. It's the fact that I moved the captain off of Ruud van Nistelrooy to double down, which I'm really upset with myself because I knew he could give Ledley King a hard game. But what can you do? It's all hindsight now. It's just trying to chase those really good games. At the end of the day, we're going to be captaining Van Nistelrooy nearly every week, and when the opportunity presents itself, where he's away to a reasonably, decent side, and you've got another player at home in a good matchup, I think there's going to be other stories where we do this and it really works out, and it has done already this season. It just wasn't one of those times, unfortunately. And playing safe with Van Nistelrooy was obviously the play.
Yeah, we're going to talk about Man United. I think it's pretty hard not to captain him over the next few weeks. The one thing I'll say about Slakovic, selling him, I kind of overlooked the fact he has Ipswich at home, Villa away, and a double game week from what I can see in the next four. So potentially a bit too soon, but I guess you can always get him back. Let's start off with Leicester because there was loads of hype about them last week or going into game week 9. Obviously, we're going into game week 10 now. And they had a bit of a shocker, 1-0 loss against West Ham. Dean Sturridge got, I think he just got subbed. I don't think he was injured on 36 minutes, which I guess was a bit of a surprise. And basically they did nothing. So do you think this is just a bit of a bad day at the office? And like you said, there's still kind of a few game weeks to go, or do you think this is a sign of things to come?
Definitely a bad day at the office. The thing with this is it's a really good matchup to play West Ham when they're obviously away. It's been very good this sim. It's good in nearly every sim I look at. They've been atrocious for most of the time. So there was always a good chance that Leicester could smash them. However, Leicester aren't one of the top teams themselves. I think they only average something like 1.5 goals at home themselves. So they're one of the weaker teams offensively at home overall. So there was always a chance that they wouldn't come through. It's not like I was going to say like an Arsenal versus Charlton, but that's a bad example, isn't it? So when I run the sims, this would happen occasionally. West Ham would win. Sometimes there'd be a draw, but there was numerous times where Leicester would win 3, 4, and I actually had 6-2s to Leicester in about 15 sims I looked at. So it was just, buying a ticket to the lottery at the end of the day, and it was just a bad day at the office. It didn't work out. They got super keepers. That's a term in CM that a lot of the guys use on the forums, where I haven't seen the match stats from this, and maybe it won't be the case, but his lot played an 8, so did Walker. So there's a chance that his lot made quite a few saves. And sometimes in this game, just as an interesting quirk, I'm going to go off a tangent here. If you play this game and your team's incredible, you got Totti, Ronaldinho, whoever else, you've got like a super tactic, which, in the newer football managers, you can probably play for about 3 or 4 weeks before the AI works it out and you start to lose. In this, you can maybe make a season and a half. And the way the AI tries to counteract it is, rather than do anything else, they literally can't stop it. They just start employing super keeper. So you'll literally get beat 1-0 and the opposite keeper will save everything and get a 9 or a 10. And it's known as the super keeper. So I wonder if this happened in this version here. But, some of the things that happened in this match, Dean Sturridge coming off on 36 minute, that's really unfortunate for his owners. But the thing with Sturridge, he's 5.5 kind of for a reason, because he isn't always nailed over the sims. They do have Harte-Ache who's on the bench there. They've got Trevor Benjamin. And although he does usually play the vast majority of games, there are quite a few where he does get early subs. And it's a trend I've actually noticed now in what we're playing, is that when a team plays one up front and then one sort of in a number 10 with a pushed on arrow, like Arsenal have been doing, for example, if the game's not going their way or there's a red card, it's nearly always the very front man who gets subbed off. So it doesn't matter who he is. So Henri, for example, this happened to quite a few times this sim already. So they obviously decided after, Izzet got injured and Scowcroft would have gone back into centre midfield, and they've put two forwards on. Harte-Ache has gone up there. But then they've just decided it's not working, and they've taken basically the main front man off to try and adjust things. And it seems to be a strategy that the AI employs quite a lot. So I guess it's just something to be aware of. If you've got a team that's playing one up top and there's a red card or it's not going you well, that you've always got a chance that your man's going to get dragged off, unfortunately, if he's the one right up top. But yeah, heartbreaking for the guys who captained him. I'm assuming it's just 1 point for them. Apart from that, the Leicester team was pretty much as we expected, I think. Izzet's an unfortunate injury, but I don't think many people have got him. He's quite expensive. And again, he's usually on penalties, is it? So when he came off injured on 29, obviously Sturridge hadn't come off at this point, I was thinking, there's quite a few players here who could get lucky and get a penalty, because Dennis Wise would be in the frame, Scowcroft, Sturridge. There's a number of people who could have picked up a penalty. Even Delaney and the defenders sometimes take them. So I was waiting to see that happen, but obviously it didn't work out that way.
Yeah,
bad day for Leicester.
Pretty frustrating. But Dean Sturridge, there's no reason why he wouldn't just come straight back into the team. I know he's 5.5. Yeah, exactly. So I might even look at getting him in this week. Just hope he doesn't come off at 36 minutes every single week. Let's talk about, there's a new signing for Spurs, Richard Johnson. I'm sure everyone remembers him. You found a picture of him for one of your sims, I assume, where he was at Watford. So they've signed him from Watford. And you've got his stats up. I mean, he's a defensive midfielder, so the way they're setting up always seems to be with Poyet and Selakovic in centre mid. So do you think he's going to overtake one of them, and maybe one of them will get pushed forward?
Yeah, it's really tricky because I've not had a chance to put him in the Spurs team and see what they do. The thing is, they've had perfectly viable option in Simon Davies, who's incredible in the game and just only gets better, who usually plays in that centre midfield role. And he either starts the season there, and that's why Selakovic is AMC, or occasionally he'll make his way in around halfway through the season, end up with about 20 games, Davies will, with a load of sub appearances on. And that's when Selakovic starts pushing up, like halfway through the season. So now they've added this guy in the mix, and he's a new signing. I'm always wary that therefore they could come straight into the team. He's of the prime age for a midfielder, so he might play. So I think there's a chance that he now comes in, because they're not favouring Davies for whatever reason, and that pushes Selakovic up. But without simming it, I couldn't know for sure. I mean, he's not a particularly good player in the game, as you can see. In terms of returns, he actually does all right for Watford, but that will be mainly due to the fact that he's got 20 for long shots, which is a really important stat for any centre midfielder for goals, obviously. So I wouldn't be surprised if he nets the odd goal here and there just from 20 for long shots is incredible. So he probably will get a couple of goals, but as a DM, and we're not sure he even starts, I certainly wouldn't be looking at him yet. That's for sure. It's more about whether he'll help Selakovic. I guess we'll have to see on that one.
Yeah, exactly, because I know a lot of you have kind of said how good Selakovic usually is, so hopefully he'll keep playing. Maybe he'll get pushed forward. So if you've kept him, I guess especially given the fixtures, probably worth keeping a bit longer and not getting rid just yet and seeing what happens. What about Ian Harte just seems to be constantly talked about, because I think there was a lot of hope for him coming into this game or coming into this season. And it's kind of, I don't know, it hasn't been great for him. And he did get an assist in this one, but he did come off on the 58th minute, I think. Yeah, so he missed out. And you've talked about it before with other players, when they're not fully fit, 76%, there's a good chance they'll either not play or start and come off injured because the AI will play them. And that's pretty much what happened here, right? He's gone off injured because he wasn't fully fit to play the game.
No. So not quite. So basically, if a player starts the game and they're orange flagged, so they're still technically minor injury, is called. Usually that means they're at 90%.
Oh, okay.
Then there's an incredible chance that they'll come off injured, which has happened multiple times this sim, and actually happened this week again. Ziga was played at 90%. So I did a little lotto saying that what minute will he get injured and come off. It actually turns out he lasted till like the 90th minute, I think 91st, but he still came off injured. So in Hart's case, he'd actually got over his injury, so he was no longer injured. He was at 76%. So the feeling was beforehand that he wouldn't start just because he'd be too tired. I wasn't 100% sure whether that would be the case. It was not something that's very easy to test. And then obviously they released the news that he does start. So I did a few sims where he was at 76%, and basically he would play the full 90 as long as there wasn't a left back on the bench. When there was a left back on the bench, he'd get subbed after the 60th minute on the few times that I did it. So obviously netting a clean sheet if they were to get one. And they didn't have a left back on the bench in this game, so it looked like Hart was set for 90. Now, by a freak occurrence, it appears he has just got injured with a completely different injury. He's now got a chest injury, which obviously nothing to do with the thigh. So it looks like someone cantonaded him in the chest or whatever, and it's just a complete unlucky situation where he went off injured. Because conditions not directly related to injury in that way, that's more to do with their stamina, so he just wouldn't have been at his top performance. I mean, anyone who's played this game will know if you play, for example, in the Bundesliga, you start off a season there, you're forced to play like a two-legged cup tie, pretty much like day one. So all your players are on like 50 to 60% condition, and you just have no option but to play an entire team of 60%ers. And in that scenario, none of your players get injured or come off for any reason or for any more than they normally would. So it's not related to that. It's just
really unlucky.
Typical fantasy, right? At the moment where we're all looking for it, it happens. But there you go.
Okay, fair enough. I got that wrong. Well, I mean, I've been looking at getting. We don't know how long he's out for, right? I don't think at the moment they've released some injuries, but I don't.
2 weeks. 2 weeks.
Oh, it is 2 weeks. Okay. I mean, I was already thinking about getting rid of him because he's so expensive, and I feel like we're just relying on attack and returns for the most part. Even though they did get a clean sheet here, so he's going to miss Arsenal away, Chelsea at home, which are tough enough anyway, and then it's Newcastle away, Leicester away. So do you think it's just a case of must sell at this point? No point hanging on to him.
Well, given the AI's obviously reliance to want to play this guy, there is now a very realistic opportunity that he'll be on 90% with a minor injury, and they will play him in that second game, which means he will then get injured again.
Okay.
Very likely. So I was selling him this week anyway. It was always penciled in for this week, just for the poor fixtures. You know, Hart's not really a fixtures pick, as we know. He could get goals or assists in any game. So for me, it was just a case of I don't really want Hart anymore because he's not really getting the goals or assists, and I think there's some better value elsewhere potentially. So that's what I was doing. That could be a brave move because he's highly owned, and obviously penalties can come in any game. But now, given these circumstances as well, and the fact that he could therefore extend the injury if he's played, I'm definitely going through on my plan and selling him. However, keeping him is, a viable strat. They might not play him injured. He misses the 2 hard games where if you can get away with the benching, and then suddenly you've got what could be a bit more of a differential who could, easily get 2 or 3 pens in a game straight away. So I think there's arguments for both ways on Hart, to be honest.
We did get some questions in. So one of them was from FPL. Richard said replacements. Obviously, it's quite a broad thing because he's 6.5 million. So when I'm going to sell him, I'm going to go super cheap because I want to buy a player, which we're going to talk about in a minute. Is there any particular players that are on the radar for defenders for you right now?
Well, I think if you're staying in that same bracket, the premium bracket, then you got to look at the fixtures really, and straight away the ones that jump out are probably Man United and Arsenal. Man United obviously away to Villa now, and then they've got a crazy good run, home to Southampton, home to Bolton, away to Middlesbrough's not great, but they could easily get a clean sheet there, and then it's home to Everton. So
Sylvester straight in.
Yeah, I mean, that's the obvious move, isn't it? I'd pay the extra for Sylvester over Blanc personally. And then obviously Arsenal haven't been doing that well themselves, but they've got a home tie against Leeds where they often do very, very well at home to Leeds in most of my sims. Away to Blackburn, not the toughest, and then home to Derby and home to Sunderland where you'd expect clean sheets there. So Ashley Cole's obviously the main pick, I would guess, and Sol Campbell, if he plays all of them, can potentially be on penalties as well at 6 million. So those are the premiums I'd look at. Otherwise, I'd actually just look for, like you said, super cheapies and look for, don't worry about clean sheets. I would literally just look at who's getting the high average ratings to get the bonuses, because clean sheets cannot be relied on, even for the top teams, apparently, at the moment. So I would just look at who's consistently doing very well in average rating. So your Titus Brambles, your Ridersons, your Alan Gomez, people like this. And if you use Whitebeard's stats, Whitebeard is on Twitter. He's done a really, really good stats page, which basically you can just look at who's got the highest average rating for defenders. I would sort by that and just pick one of the few players that's up there, to be honest with you.
Job done. So yeah, go and pick one for your price range, I guess, and maybe have a look at the fixtures as well. That would always help. So we'll go on to Man United next, because this is kind of where my Hart downgrade comes in, because now Varane has gone and got, I think it was a goal and an assist in this game. They won 3-2 against Spurs and no clean sheet, but plenty of goals, 2 for Van Nistelrooy, like I said, 1 goal, 1 assist for Ron. So now he's suddenly back on the radar, and obviously the fixtures are coming into it. So one of the questions that came in a few times, one was from Mark Dawn. He said, should people be moving Beckham to Varane? Is Beckham's time over? Obviously, there's a £2 million price difference, so you've got to take that into the equation. But is it just Varane time right now?
Well, but I think that's slightly unfair to Beckham. He's still ticked along and done very well. I still think he's viable, definitely. But in a straight shootout, I mean, so again, I don't believe form exists in this game. I don't believe any of it. I knew as soon as Varane came back in, he was always likely to do this because he's one of the best players in the game. And the thing is, Varane did miss a penalty in this game, but that's a good sign of anything. It means Varane's on penalties. That will probably not change. So Varane will probably have those as well. So goals are more rewarding than assists, and Varane scores a lot more than Beckham. So I think it is potentially a worthwhile addition. The only other thing I'd add to it is Beckham is probably a little bit more nailed over these few games, whereas sometimes in easy home games, they will rest Varane and stick Scholes in. So you could get unlucky. I mean, it could happen to Beckham as well, but on average, he plays more games than Varane, maybe by 2 or 3 a season. So Varane is slightly more at risk of it. So I guess, Man United are playing every midweek, from the whole time, so you're always a chance. So I would say if you don't rip up your team, if you've got Beckham, I certainly wouldn't be looking to take hits and all sorts of stuff just to upgrade him to Varane. I'd be tempted to chance it. However, if you've got neither of them and you're looking for one of the assets, then Varane is the go-to for me.
That's what I'm doing. And also, he probably won't be by the time we get into the next game week, but he's turned into pretty much a differential because everyone kind of jumped off of him. And obviously he was out. So, yeah, I think for me, this is going to be the time to jump on. That's what you said just a minute ago. It's Villa away, Southampton, Bolton, Middlesbrough and Everton. So the fixtures are ridiculous. I mean, at this point, I don't like to use the word essential. Everyone hates that word in fantasy. But do you think a triple up is almost essential on Man United? Like Van Nistelrooy, definitely. What about defender and midfielder?
I think so. I mean, I tripled up on Man United for their start of the season, where they not quite as good a run of this, but it wasn't far off, because I felt that was essential because they're the best team by a long distance. They usually are. It didn't quite work out. It just didn't work out. But you have to be in it for it to happen. And if it happens this time and you haven't got 3, I think you're going to get left behind. The games are just too good. Playing Southampton when you're at home, if they put their full team out, that's the kind of game where they can score 6-7 goals. Like it could happen. Same for Bolton. So they might win 2-1. It might be a letdown, but I'm going to have to cover it in case it's one of those 5 or 6-0 games. They happen a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to. One thing, I'm not saying I would have made all the right decisions because I don't have the knowledge that you guys have for this, but one thing I always do in normal FPL is not get differentials just to chase, because yes, it can work, but you can also get left behind. I feel like I'm trying to be too clever at the moment, so I'm going back to boring for the next few weeks. Triple Man United, captain Man United every single week, and let's see if we can jump up the ranks that way. Next up, we have Newcastle. So Alan Shearer, red card, which was hugely frustrating for me. I had him as well, not captain though, luckily. So he come off on 90 minutes. He's out for 1 match. We should mention as well, because I've not got the image up, but Marley for Fulham is also out for 3 weeks. I think that one is. But Shearer's out for a week, so he's going to miss the next game. I saw also that Solano played right back in this one. Is that a sign of things to come, or is that just a one-off?
Okay, so firstly on Shearer, he won't miss this week, so he'll play this week, home to Sunderland. The ban actually comes into effect afterwards. So with Shearer, I mean, he's probably the best captain this week, potentially, discounting Van Nistelrooy, if you can do that, because he's home to Sunderland. Now, Shearer's actually got 20 for a hidden stat for important games and for pressure and all sorts of stuff like that. So although it didn't quite work out against Blackburn, a former team of his, he got sent off. At home to Sunderland, they're a rival team. I would think Shearer is more than capable of doing a madness in that game. So I'll certainly be keeping him and playing him in that. I think he'll be heavily captained in that game. And then he actually ends up only missing now Liverpool away, which was obviously a pretty terrible game anyway. And then he's back for Leeds at home, Tottenham at home. Now, on the paper, they don't sound great, but Leeds defense away has already been shown to be shocking, and over the sims it's not good at all, really bad, like 1.9 I think it is roughly goals conceded away. And likewise with Spurs, their defense away from home is not great either. So, and then they potentially have a double in 16 after Bolton away and Man United home. So it's a mixed amount of fixtures. I can see the argument for, if it's allowing you to jump on Veron and Beckham, keeping him for one more week and then taking the funds out and then using that money to get Veron. But again, equally, I can also see if you can afford to bench him for the Liverpool game, it's Alan Shearer. The guy can hit 30 goals in a season. He's one of the few forwards who's on penalties. Again, Van Nistelrooy is great. Veron ended up taking the penalties. So, Sunderland, if there's a red card, how many red cards, injuries, and penalties are happening every single game?
Yeah, it feels like every game.
Exactly. So there are games out there, and you'll see people who post them where Ian Harte scored 4 penalties in a game. I've had sims where Shearer scored 13 penalties and scored something like 30-something goals. Now, it doesn't happen very often, but it can happen. So I'd be tempted to keep him.
You got me worried now. Like, if I've probably missed the rule here again. This is why you're on here, basically, the knowledge man. So every time they get a red card, do they always get to play the next game and then get suspended? Like, why does it work like that?
Basically, back in the day, I think it was this in real life. I'm assuming matches it, that there's a 2-week window. So if you get a red card, it doesn't take effect until 2 weeks from that date. So they'll always be able to play, and then their ban will come in. I think that was in the past because you could appeal it. So in this game, you're managing, you can appeal your red card. I don't know whether the AI even attempts that. So, for example, Marley got banned for 3 and Shearer only got banned for 1. Now, I don't know if it's because of the severity of the incident. It might just be that. But when you're actually managing a team, it will give you the option to appeal. And if you do it, you can reduce the ban. So maybe the AI appealed it. I don't know on that, to be honest, because I wouldn't know how the AI works in the background if you're not managing them.
Yeah, it makes sense. You've put a spanner in the works, because I thought he was going to miss the next game, which I thought was Sunderland at home. That's why I was so keen on getting Veron. He was going to be my moneymaker by getting rid of Shearer. But now I'm... Sunderland at home is a pretty decent fixture, so I might just keep. We'll see about that. What about Solano?
Solano, yeah. So if anyone watched my videos pre-season, I said that Solano is a real mixed bag in this game. He's got the potential to be very good. Now I think the guys were very clever pricing him at 6 million, because on the face of it, it looked like that was just nuts value, and it is nuts value if he's starting every week and he's playing right wing for Newcastle. But not only can he just not play, he can also end up getting transferred to a different team, but also he can end up playing right back, which is what I said on the videos as well, will happen occasionally. Now, it's just because he's got a decent stat for playing at right back that he will occasionally just randomly fit in, because they don't really know what they're doing with their right back slot, Newcastle. They've got Barton, who they occasionally bench. They've got Gallivan, who can play there. And then on rare occasions, Solano will. So it's just one of those things. I wouldn't expect him to continue to play at right back. It's just, on occasion, he will end up playing there because they like to rotate around. So next week, I'd expect he's back to, right midfield, but equally he could be benched. It's not happened now. So a lot of people are saying, what are you talking about, Solano being rotated? It's not happened. Well, okay, we've got our first sign that it could happen. I expect he'll be back right wing for Sunderland. Who knows?
Hopefully he is, because he's been such good value there, and I bought him in last week, so fingers crossed. Just quickly going back to Shearer. So if people were looking to downgrade them, and FPL Richard again has asked a question about replacements. So let's say people are looking to downgrade to maybe get Beckham or maybe to get Veron. Who is there in particular players around kind of maybe the 5.5 to 7 million mark that you think are probably the best options? Obviously, we already spoke about Sturridge at Leicester, who's probably still a good option, not going to get subbed hopefully on 36 minutes every week. Is there anyone else kind of in that bracket that you'd look at?
Well, I think now you've got a few options, really. I mean, Henry's going to suddenly start coming into some really good games. So you could go the other way. I mean, to get Veron, Van Nistelrooy and Henry is going to be some doing. I don't know whether it's even possible, really, with a good team. Maybe it is. So if you want to go that way, but some people will just be looking that way. I think Henry is now a reasonable shout. He's got some really good home games. Other than that, you've obviously got Boxic is due back this week, who was fantastic beforehand, is consistently very, very good. He's at 7 million. So I'd certainly have him in my thoughts. You've got Dwight York, if you haven't got triple Man United. I still cannot believe that Dwight York has not got, I don't think he's got a goal or an assist, and we're into game week, 10 now?
10 now, yeah.
11. which is mind blowing to me because usually the only thing that really holds York back being great is whether he starts games, and he started the majority. There's a bit of rotation with him, but he's a fantastic differential over these games now at 7 million for me. Won't play every one, but he can still be great value. Only needs that one game he plays where he gets 2 or 3 goals, and suddenly he's matched another one who's played 5 games, if that makes sense. So I think he's still a good pick. Robbie Keane's consistently ticking along. The fixtures aren't great, but he's consistently playing pretty well. So he's another one I'd look at. And then there's Sturridge. I know he got subbed off, but the games are still good. He's 5.5 million. I see no reason why he wouldn't play. I mean, Derby at home, Charlton away, Southampton away. They're 3 really good games. So he's also pretty good value as well. They'd basically be my top picks, I think.
Cool, there's plenty of options, but like you said, they might be worth keeping him. Even if you get rid of him after this week, I suppose, just get that Sunderland game under the belt and just go from there. All right, we'll finish up with the rest of the questions that come in. There were quite a few this week. So FPL Oakwell said, are there any mid-priced midfielders to look out for apart from Johnston? And then he's got a question about Arsenal. We'll start with that one first. Is there any other? Because I mean, that's one, like, I guess, price range where I found it really difficult to find someone that I really like. I've got Stokers at Fulham and McPhail still as well at Leeds, so I've gone like pretty cheap. So is there any kind of mid-priced players around kind of the 7-8 million mark? Obviously, Scowcroft was a big deal last week. Might still be good with the fixtures potentially.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing. These midfield spots are not particularly consistent, and that's why I think it's good just to go cheap. You just can't expect returns every single week. So I think you've got the right strategy there. They're just not returned in the last 1 or 2, so people start getting itchy. Now, Johnston averages in my sims around 4 goals a season. I think he's probably already on 4. So this is almost unheard of for him. I wouldn't expect it to continue where he continues to, ends up on an absolute outlier. I mean, it could happen, but goals aren't usually really his thing, especially when Boxic comes back. I think you'll see more assists and Boxic will start hogging the goals. Obviously, he's a great pick. But otherwise, I'll just look at the cheap midfielders. The ones you've already mentioned there are still good, in my opinion. I still think Stolz's is a good pick at that price. I still think Collins is a good pick. I think Dennis Wise is still a very good pick at 6. He takes set pieces, or often high rating, and they're still good fixtures. So I'd still be looking at him. Apart from that, there isn't too many around. I mean, Svensson at Southampton still got good fixtures. He plays Charlton at home, away to Man United, obviously very tough, then home to Leicester, home to Derby. So I think over those 4, I'd expect some returns from him. He's 6 million, usually takes all set pieces and sometimes can claim penalties as well. So over Kevin Davis or BT, so he's definitely a good shout for me. Apart from that, there isn't too many names rearing their head. Again, Arsenal have got the good games, so whether you want a chance going for Tikhonov, who's playing every game at left wing again, occasionally gets penalties. Albertini's coming at 6.5 million. That's more of a fixtures pick than anything for Arsenal. But yeah, those would be my top names for there, I suppose.
Yeah, plenty of options there. So it's a good segue actually, because he asked another question. It's a bit like at the briefings that the Prime Minister and stuff's doing in the UK for coronavirus at the moment. All the journalists ask 1, 2, 3, 4 questions just to get them all in. He's asked 2, FPL Oakwell. So he actually said, and you talked about Arsenal, what on earth is up with them? They've just lost to Charlton. I mean, Henry has not really done anything for the last few weeks. I mean, you mentioned him earlier, said the fixtures coming up, he could obviously turn it on again. He's a great player, really good stats, etc., as we know. You mentioned Tikhonov there, who's a good price. Is there anyone else that you would keep outside of the defenders? Because, I mean, defensively, they got pretty decent enough fixtures. And obviously, you've said before, they're kind of top 2, top 3 team anyway. But are the attackers worth it right now for Arsenal?
Yeah, I think they are, because I don't think form is a thing. So at the end of the day, the fixtures are good and they're great players. So like when Veron came back just now, I think if you're a top tier player in a top tier team, then there's every chance that they can do very well in these matchups. The game does have freak occurrences and random results, the same as real life with Norwich beating Man City and stuff like that. It does happen.
Don't remind me of that.
Yeah, if it's not built into the game, then the game would be just ridiculously predictable. They have to have a little bit of it. And Charlton obviously super keepered with Kylie against Arsenal. But that doesn't mean that it's going to happen next week. So I still like Arsenal. I mean, Omri got an 8 in that game, despite them not conceding. He's still, I think he was second or third as the highest average rating player in the game, despite being subbed off before the 60th minute a few times and not doing so much. And that just tells you everything you need to know about Henry. He gets incredibly high average ratings. He's always in the frame for bonus. And at the end of the day, he just now needs to add the assists and goals, similar to Van Nistelrooy, right? He's getting 2 bonus and a high average rating in games where he hasn't been doing much, which is why he's been so key. But Henry can do the same. So I think Arsenal are still worth looking at, and I'd expect them to win at home to Leeds now. Well, in my sims, they win comfortably at home to Leeds most of the time, so it's a pretty good test.
We'll see what happens. So you mentioned there, like, you don't think player form is a thing. You don't have to get completely into it again, because I know you've done a video on it. So I'll grab the link off you and I'll put that in the link of the podcast and on YouTube if people want to watch that. But one of the questions did come in based on that video and said, if you think player form is not relevant, does that mean that team form is also not a thing in this? I.e., if a team's on a run of fixtures and they've done really well, could that just not happen then for the next few game weeks?
Yeah, I mean, what do we even use to judge that? I mean, the only thing in the game that is visible to say whether a team's on the form is to go look at their previous fixture and say, oh, they've been winning a few. I don't think that matters for anything. It's basically whether you buy into morale and team morale as being a thing, which I don't. So, no, I don't believe that is a thing. I think that you can see here, look how many random results happened. There were so many random results here. I mean, Villa winning away to Fulham was an incredible surprise. They've been shocking away. West Ham, their manager's about to get sacked. Glenn Roeder, he's insecure. He nearly always gets sacked in the game as well. They've been totally awful. And that was part of the reason why I thought, well, I'll bring in a Leicester player because this could be the game that sees him get the sack. If they get one of those 6-2s that's happened in my sims and it's perfectly set up for it, he'll be going goodbye. And they go and win against Leicester. So you can't tell me there's any team form there. It's just the matchup. And I don't think you should bear that in mind. Middlesbrough having a cracker. Will they end up winning the league because their form's so good? I'm going to say no right now. I mean, I've never seen Middlesbrough in the league, I don't think. It's usually always one of Arsenal, Man United or Liverpool. Occasionally Leeds will go in there as well. If it happens, I'll hold my hands up, but I can't see it personally.
Not expecting it. Yeah, I think even in real life, like, team form is not necessarily a thing. Like, I get that when you're winning, the morale and stuff is up, and I'm sure being a Liverpool player, for example, this season has been quite easy in terms of morale, but all you need is a tough run of fixtures and you start losing a couple or you're getting a few draws here or there and suddenly that's out the window. So I'm not even sure it's I'm sure it is a bit of a thing in real life.
There's been lots of studies in that in real life, isn't there?
Yeah.
Let's not get too deep on that.
Yeah. Let's stick to Championship Manager. So 2 more questions. So the first one is, so you kind of touched on this before, that some players will progress into really good players, although it might not be this season. So Jay Loveshank said, when do we start looking at the youngsters? He said, obviously there's a lot of circumstances, but stats do develop as the season progresses. We're already in the back end of October now. Will the likes of Joe Cole and Steven Gerrard be progressing? I think it's too early for that.
I mean, they will be progressing. Their stats will be going up. I mean, Joe Cole didn't start this week. He came on and scored. So it's stuff like that where it's essentially training and game time will improve the players' stats. Now, we have no control over their training, obviously, because we're not doing that. So it's essentially game time. So are these guys playing? And if they are playing, then their stats will increase at a higher rate. So I would start thinking around, most of the time come the end of the season, the players have a massive jump in attributes. So around the sort of January, February, March time is when you'll see. But the easiest way to do this will be whenever they do their stream on a Sunday, is asked to see these players and just have a look at their stats. And if you look at Joe Cole, when those 20s are starting to fire up all over the place, then obviously the guys are about to start hitting some really good form. Because at the end of the day, if you've got high attributes in those areas, you've always got a chance of scoring that long shot, of hitting that finish, of hitting that cross, or whatever it may be. So yeah.
Yeah, make sure so the Fantasy Chat Man guys do a stream every Sunday, so maybe jump into that and see what they can show you. And last question, Craig Kemp, are clean sheets overrated? I feel like we've talked about this before, because it feels like there's just like you said earlier, it's just so hard to pick a clean sheet at the moment, and it has been for a lot of the season. So are they overrated, and should we be looking at, and again, you kind of mentioned this already, should we be looking at defenders strong on bonus as a priority, to those with maybe the high average ratings that are going to get those bonus points, rather than trying to pick clean sheets?
Exactly that. That's what I've been doing since game week 3. I had my couple of premiums in there, which I'll just leave because they've got the highest chance of clean sheets. But I've picked the ones that are more likely to get the bonus. So obviously I haven't gone Blanc, I've gone Sylvester, I haven't gone Campbell, I've gone Cole, stuff like that. And then for my defenders, I've been champion Alan Goma and the likes of Huncho for a long time. I mean, Hippie is another example here. Liverpool haven't been keeping that many clean sheets. Hippier's getting 3 bonus or 2 bonus every single game he plays. If you go back and look through Hippier's games from the very start of the season, you will see that he has got bonus. Even in the Champions League and the League Cup, every game he's played, he's basically in the frame, unless Honcho's with him, and then Honcho usually trumps him. And obviously, he's been injured and in and out of the team. Didn't start in the team, then he got an injury. So it's those kind of players I've looked at. I haven't really even looked at clean sheets, and I think that for 4.5 defenders, yeah, you just want the likes of the guys who are. I mean, when you can mix the both, like Harte-Ache and Bramble have had that perfect blend of having high average ratings and having some good fixtures, then great. But for me, I don't want to have to spend transfer swapping in and out 4.5 defenders all across the season. So I've championed Tarico from the very start. Unfortunately, he got injured, but it's because he gets those high average ratings regardless of the game. And Alan Gomer's another one for me who does that quite consistently. So those are the two that I'm going for as my two 4.5s. But there are a number of them. If you just look through the high average ratings, who's up there, there's quite a few that you can go for. And I'm just going to leave them in. I mean, I'm probably going to bring Alan Gomer in this week. I was going to do it the week just gone if Hart was definitely out. He wasn't out, so I kept him. And this week I'll be bringing him in. Now, Fulham are away to Everton. Everton aren't a great side, but Fulham's defence away is shocking. Do I expect Gomer to keep a clean sheet? Not at all, but I'm very hopeful that he might get an 8 and get me a couple of bits of bonus. So that's why I'm doing it.
Yeah, you mentioned that one of the first videos we did. And that's kind of, I basically took your advice, and that's the strategy I went with. It was annoying that Tarico got injured, but yeah, he got me a few points a couple of times, even without getting a clean sheet. So that's kind of, and like you said, I don't even know where the clean sheets are going to come from outside of the big guns anyway. So you might as well just put them in and use your transfers elsewhere, especially if you want to like chase the fixtures for the like the heavy hitters up front and stuff like that. At least that's what I've done. It's not gone great so far, but maybe that'll change.
I mean, you could probably get more points by chasing the fixtures with 4.5 defenders, but we get one transfer a week. If you're doing that, you're missing that point to the other end.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And they could easily just not get a clean sheet, so it was a total waste of a transfer. So yeah.
Cool. We're kind of done with all the questions. One more thing, I guess, is do you know what transfer you're doing this week? Have you thought about that yet?
So yeah, Gomer will be coming in for Hart. That was always penciled in beforehand, and now he's got this injury. It's pretty much cemented it for me. So I'll be doing that. That's in order to free up some money where I can then change. In game week 11, I'll be bringing in either Veron or Beckham, depending on whether I want to take a hit or not. So to get that double Man United attack, I think it's going to be needed. So that's my long-term plan. Hopefully I can make it to game week 11 without injuries and red cards, changing the plan every single week. That would be nice.
Fingers crossed. I mean, I'm pretty much the same. If anyone cares, well, you've kind of put a spanner in the works, like I said, with Shearer, because I was going to get him out and Hart out and get Veron in for. I was going to just get rid of Scowcroft straight away, even though the fixtures are good. I just want that Man United player in. But it would be much easier to get Beckham and maybe keep Shearer at this point. So I'm going to have a think on that. I think I'm just going to stick the armband on Ruben Nistelrooy and just leave that for the next 4 or 5 weeks and hope that works out because he just looked pretty good and the fixtures are great. Cool. All right, we'll leave it there. Thanks very much for joining me, Luke.
No problem. It was a pleasure.
And I'm sure we'll be doing the same time next week. Good luck in game week 10 and 11 because obviously we are kind of skipping every other week because of the 2 game weeks a week thing that's going on. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to give it a like, subscribe, all that good stuff. And we will see you again next week. Cheers all.